Hey everyone, glad you're here. I've got a new story to share today, one that's been sitting in the back of my mind for quite some time. To be honest, it comes from something I've never really been able to wrap my head around. It's this one question that keeps bothering me whenever I hear about breakups. Why do so many people leave the door cracked open for their exes, even after the relationship is supposed to be over? Seriously, think about it. If breaking up means ending things, why does it seem like so many folks still let their ex linger? Texting, calling, sometimes even meeting up like nothing changed. Maybe I'm old-fashioned, but I've always thought that once it's done, it's done. Maybe that's just how I'm wired. But to me, keeping that tie alive feels wrong, like you're pretending to move on while still holding on to the past. Which brings me to the story I'm about to tell, how things between me and my fiancée Deborah started to fall apart. And how that question I just asked became way more personal than I ever expected. Let me back up. I've known Deborah for years, long before we ever dated. Back then, she was stuck in a really toxic relationship with a guy who, well, I won't name him, but let's just say he was bad news. The kind of person who kept you constantly on edge. One moment yelling, the next cold and withdrawn. Sometimes worse than that. I saw what she went through. I never tried to step in or play the hero. I knew she had to make that choice herself. Eventually, she did. It was messy and painful, but she walked away. When she left him, she wasn't the same person. You could see it in her eyes. She felt lost, fragile. I stayed by her side, not as anything romantic at first, just as someone she could lean on. A few months later, when she started regaining her footing, I asked her out. To my surprise, she said yes. Things moved quickly after that. Maybe because we already had an emotional foundation, or maybe because we both knew what we didn't want in a partner. We fell for each other hard. A year and a half later, we were engaged. Moving in together felt like the natural next step. We were already spending nearly all our time together anyway. Those first few months of living together? Some of the happiest of my life. Cooking dinner, binge-watching shows late into the night, strolling through the neighborhood. It all felt steady, solid, right? I really thought we were building something that would last. But, of course, it didn't stay perfect. It started on an ordinary night. I couldn't find my phone, searched the kitchen, checked under the couch cushions, behind the pillows. No luck. So I grabbed Deborah's phone to call mine. Totally innocent. But when I opened her call log to dial, something caught my eye, her ex's name, sitting right there in recent calls. And it wasn't from weeks ago. It was just a few days earlier. That hit me like a punch to the chest. This wasn't just some old numbers saved in her contacts. They'd actually been talking. I opened their texts, hoping I'd misunderstood, hoping there was some harmless explanation. But no, they'd been chatting back and forth like they were old friends. It didn't make sense. Not after all she'd told me about him. Not after everything he'd put her through. I walked into the bedroom where she was lying down and asked straight out, "Why are you still talking to him?" She looked surprised, clearly caught off guard, but she didn't deny it. She said it was nothing serious, just casual conversation that he'd checked in. I told her exactly how I felt, that it made me uncomfortable, that it crossed a line. She had told me he was in her past, that what he did was unforgivable. She looked at me and said, "If it makes you feel better, I'll cut off contact. I don't want this to come between us." That eased me a little. I figured maybe I was overreacting. Maybe it was just a slip. Now we could move on. But we didn't. Over the next few weeks, I started noticing little changes. Deborah, who used to be casual about her phone, suddenly guarded it like a secret. She kept it on her at all times, even taking it to the bathroom, folding laundry with it in her pocket, carrying it from room to room. At first, I tried to ignore it. Everyone's glued to their phones these days, right? But the energy felt different, and I couldn't shake the feeling something was off. So one day, I did something I'd never done before. I went home during my lunch break without telling her. I needed a hard drive I'd forgotten that morning, had left the house early for work and needed it for a meeting later that day. Normally, I'd give her a quick heads up before stopping by. But this time I didn't. I figured I'd just grab it and go. I found the drive and was halfway out the door when I thought I could use a coffee. There's a little cafe a few blocks away I go to often. I drove over, parked, walked inside, gave a nod to the girl behind the counter, and ordered my usual. A few minutes later, drink in hand, I turned to leave. And that's when I saw them. Deborah sitting in the corner. With her ex. At first, it didn't even register. They were so absorbed in their conversation that they didn't even notice me standing there. I stayed still for a few moments, just watching, then made my way over to their table. I looked directly at her and said plainly, "Don't come home." Her expression froze, as if I'd just spoken a language she didn't understand. Her lips parted slightly, but nothing came out. I didn't wait for her to gather words. I turned, walked away, got into my car, and drove off. Truthfully, I couldn't even tell you how the rest of that day unfolded. I was physically present, sure, but my mind was somewhere far away. That night, when I returned home, she was already there. The moment I stepped inside, she jumped up and began explaining herself. She said her ex was dealing with personal issues and had reached out for someone to talk to. According to her, she was only offering support. Nothing inappropriate, nothing I needed to worry about. She tried to frame it as an act of compassion, almost like I should admire her for it. Helping a man she had supposedly cut ties with was, in her telling, a noble thing. I let her speak without interrupting. When she finished, I asked the one question that truly mattered. "Didn't you promise me you were done talking to him?" She hesitated. Not long, but long enough. That pause told me more than any explanation could. Before she could form a reply, I followed with another question. "Then why are you with him now?" She stumbled, searching for words, scrambling to spin another excuse. But I didn't need to hear it. I didn't want to. For me, the situation was simple. In a committed relationship, you don't keep the door cracked open for someone else to walk through. That isn't commitment. It's convenience. So I told her, clearly, that if she wasn't over him, then it was too risky for me to keep giving myself to someone whose heart might still belong to another. Her face tightened like she didn't get it, but I knew she did. She just didn't expect me to actually say it. I told her, if he matters that much, go be with him. That's when she broke down crying. She said she never meant to hurt me, that she didn't know how to explain, that she didn't want me to end things. But in my mind, I was already gone. I told her to pack her things and leave. I wasn't going to fight for a place I should already have. She stood there in tears, waiting for me to change my mind. I didn't. When she realized I meant every word, she finally grabbed a few bags and went to her parents' place. I think she believed it was temporary, that I'd cool down in a few days and we'd talk things through. But she didn't see that this wasn't anger speaking. I was responding to a choice she had already made the moment she met up with him again. I waited a couple of days, expecting she'd return to collect the rest of her belongings, maybe show at least enough respect to finish things like an adult. But nothing happened. So I decided to end it properly on my terms. I called her and told her to come by. She probably assumed I'd come to my senses, that I'd be ready to negotiate. When she arrived and saw her things already packed by the door, the truth finally sank in. This was over. She called afterward, but I didn't answer. There was nothing left to discuss. Then the messages started coming. At first they were sad, then angry. She tried to wound me back, called me insecure, controlling, said I couldn't handle a strong woman. The final jab was telling me her ex was better than me. I read them all but didn't take the bait. My only reply was, go be with him. That was the last message I sent. After that, no more calls, no more arguments. Just silence. I had plenty of time to think, not just about Deborah, but the whole situation. And honestly, I felt two things at once, sorrow and relief. Sorrow because I truly wanted us to work. I was committed. I saw a future with her. But relief because I finally saw things for what they were, not what I wished they could be. Looking back, I walked away with a few lessons. First, trust is everything. Once it's broken, you can try to fix it, but it's like piecing together a shattered mirror. The cracks remain, and you keep cutting yourself on the same edges. Second, set your boundaries early. If something feels wrong, speak up. Don't wait, hoping time will fix it. I should have drawn the line the moment I saw her texting him. Instead, I gave her the space to choose me on her own. That was my mistake. Third, actions speak louder than words. Promises are easy to make, but only actions prove them true. She said she'd cut him off. She didn't. That told me everything I needed to know. Fourth, emotional independence matters. You can't build a future with someone who's still chained to their past. It's like trying to run while someone has their hand around your ankle. You're never going to get far. And lastly, sometimes walking away is the only choice left. It hurts, yes, but holding on to something broken, hoping it will heal on its own, hurts even more. I didn't want to end things, but I wasn't willing to lose myself clinging to someone who wasn't holding on to me the same way. That's my story. If you were in my position, what would you have done? Did I make the right decision, or should I have given her another chance? Because in the end, relationships are about choices. You choose to trust. You choose to protect that trust. And when someone chooses to break it, sometimes the only choice left is to walk away.